The rhythmic drumming of rain against the glass facade of the towering headquarters of Stellar Access Solutions resonated with a foreboding I couldn't ignore. I recall observing the rivulets tracing paths down the window pane beside my workstation, each droplet seemingly vying with its neighbors to reach the base first. I often imagined them as tiny living brushstrokes, engaged in a frantic race against the relentless march of time. However, that particular morning, such whimsical daydreams were a luxury I couldn't afford. A deep-seated intuition, one I should have heeded, warned me something was amiss. An unusual stillness permeated the office. Even the customary clatter of keyboards and the forced merriment from the break room felt muted, subdued. Whispers, ethereal and elusive as smoke, drifted along the hallway, weaving their way under doors, clinging to the shoulders of those who passed. An impending event, a palpable sense of foreboding, hung heavy in the air. We all sensed it. 2 a.m. An electronic message pinged across our team's shared inbox. A mandatory company-wide meeting, conference room 7, driven by ingrained habit rather than any genuine expectation. I gathered my notebook and joined my colleagues in their silent procession to the glass-enclosed chamber at the corridor's end. I fought to mask my apprehension, to prevent my hands from betraying my inner turmoil, but my stomach, my gut instinct, knew. Inside, the assembled employees resembled statues, rigid, uncertain. Mr. Adrian Bellwether, the executive whose mere presence could send entire departments into a state of nervous trepidation, entered, flanked by 2 human resources representatives who trailed behind like specters. He was attired in his customary dark blue suit, his expression adorned with that faintly cruel half-smile that had a disconcerting effect, leaving one feeling unsettled. "Thank you for your prompt attendance," he began, his voice a blend of calmness and icy sharpness. "As part of our ongoing strategic realignment, certain difficult decisions had to be made regarding departmental streamlining to ensure optimal efficiency." His gaze then fell directly upon me.
And
"Eleanor Vance," he pronounced, each syllable drawn out with deliberate slowness. "Following a comprehensive performance evaluation, it has been determined that your current role is no longer consistent with the company's strategic objectives. Effective immediately, your employment is terminated." Silence. Absolute, agonizing silence. The kind that amplifies the sound of one's own heartbeat, making it feel like a bomb ticking within one's chest. The blood drained from my face, my mouth felt parched, my throat constricted. I couldn't even swallow. No one met my gaze. Not a single colleague offered any support. Not Patricia from accounting, who once confided in me following a painful breakup. Not Ethan, whose promotion I had actively assisted. Not even Brenda, my cubicle neighbor for 3 years, who daily borrowed my coffee mug. They all stared at their laps, their expressions mirroring that of children desperately seeking to disappear. "You may retrieve your personal belongings," Mr. Bellwether continued, already advancing to the next slide of his presentation, his demeanor as if he were discussing routine printer maintenance, devoid of any concern for basic human decency. I rose, but my legs, weak and shaky, betrayed me. Each step towards the exit felt like struggling through thick viscous mud. I opened the door, stepped into the hallway, and there, unexpectedly, he was. Frederick Davies, the building custodian, an unassuming gentleman in his 60s, always courteous, yet persistently overlooked by everyone else. He stood at the hallway's end, his cleaning cart beside him, his hands folded as if in patient expectation, waiting for me. His eyes met mine, devoid of pity, instead conveying a profound calmness, a sense of knowing. I attempted a smile, but my lips trembled uncontrollably. He then approached, his movements slow and assured, reaching into his pocket. His hand emerged, enclosing a small golden key, its edges slightly tarnished by time. "It's time," he whispered. I blinked, unsure if I had heard correctly. "Time for what?" He offered a gentle smile, the kind that stems from possessing knowledge others lack. "To breathe, Eleanor," he replied. "To finally truly breathe." Mountains I had never witnessed. Oceans I'd only encountered on television. Creatures from books I borrowed from the town library. My parents were simple folk. My mother a housekeeper. My father employed at a textile mill with rotating shifts. They loved me dearly, yet their love was tempered by a practical, cautious nature, lacking the room for uninhibited dreaming. "You draw real pretty," my father once remarked, glancing at an early sketch pinned to our refrigerator. "But art don't fill empty stomachs, Eleanor. You need a job that'll keep you on your feet." Napkins, the reverse sides of homework papers, brown paper shopping bags. I sketched late into the night, under the dim glow of a malfunctioning desk lamp. Drawing felt like being truly alive. I could inhale deeper, fuller breaths, feeling a sense of belonging, even if only within the confines of my artwork. In middle school, one of my teachers, Miss Abigail Finch, discreetly informed my parents after a parent-teacher conference that I possessed genuine artistic talent. Informing them of available scholarships, she conveyed that art could be more than just a recreational pursuit, that my unique perspective could carry me far. My mother expressed her gratitude politely. My father remained reticent. But during the car ride home, he articulated his core concern. "We can't afford foolish dreams, Eleanor," he stated. "You want to end up impoverished and begging? Do you want to be 30 and still living at home?" That evening, I put away my sketchbook for a full week. I didn't draw a single line. The act felt akin to attempting to restrain my breath underwater. The days passed like slow, agonizing suffocation. Throughout high school, I secured part-time employment at a local cafe. Saving the earnings for college, I opted for a business administration major. It was deemed a safe choice, a path with a secure future. I justified it, telling myself I could always return to drawing on weekends, but I rarely did. Weekends were typically spent battling fatigue or battling guilt. By the age of 20, I held an associate's degree, securing a small scholarship and a position at a bank. I had gained my family's approval at the cost of sacrificing parts of myself. One day, during a spring break visit to an art exhibition at a nearby community college, I paused before a striking abstract piece. The custodian inquired if I was lost. I was. I didn't say so aloud, but I truly was lost. By 23, I secured full-time employment in the finance department at Stellar Access Solutions, with comprehensive benefits, steady compensation, and even a cubicle bearing my nameplate. My father voiced his pride in my accomplishment, and I offered a smile of compliance. Yet internally, a small, bright flame flickered once more before dimming. My initial assumption upon joining Stellar Access Solutions was that I had reconciled with my life choices. The building, a testament to modern architecture, with its glass and steel construction, reflected the sky, suggesting a lack of hidden agendas or secrets. The interior exuded an aura of new carpeting, ambition, and polished surfaces. Quiet elevators transported impeccably dressed individuals in crisp shirts and expensive footwear. My assignment was to a small cubicle in the finance department, offering a view only of a brick wall and a printer that seemed to malfunction daily. My daily tasks were spreadsheets, forecasting, meetings where men exchanged terse smiles and suits while arguing over minuscule decimal points and cost-cutting schemes. No one ever discussed beauty, creativity, or the soul. Still, I convinced myself this was adulthood, success defined, yet the persistent urge in my fingertips remained. During lunch breaks, I secretly slipped away to a secluded garden at the building's rear, a small plot of grass, with 3 rarely used benches. I kept a well-worn sketchbook in my bag. There, in the shade of a tenacious magnolia tree, I allowed my hand to recapture what my heart had nearly forgotten. I sketched the building's stark lines, the way sunlight danced on the concrete, the casual posture of someone discreetly using their mobile phone. My drawings weren't created with focused intention. I drew to simply endure. There, I met Mr. Davies. He was cleaning near the edge of the building when he observed me. He stopped, leaned on his mop, and nodded towards my sketchbook. "You have a gift for light," he remarked, his voice gravelly yet kind. "My wife, Beatrice, used to draw much the same way." My childhood habit of drawing on paper bags, my decision to forego art school, and my reluctance to disclose my artistic pursuits to my colleagues. He never judged or criticized. He simply stated, "Beatrice would have admired you." Over the years, our conversations became my anchor, my lifeline amidst a daily deluge of corporate jargon and artificial smiles. My colleagues barely acknowledged me, unless they required a report correction or file retrieval. I was dependable, quiet, inconspicuous, precisely the type of employee Mr. Bellwether favored. But Mr. Davies perceived me, not as an employee, not as a spreadsheet-obsessed worker, but as Eleanor, a complete person. I believe he knew, before I did, that something inside me was slowly, quietly extinguishing itself, and that I would eventually need a path back to myself. 3 years ago, Stellar Access initiated significant organizational changes, labeled restructuring. More meetings, tighter deadlines, fewer staff. Those surviving the layoffs did not celebrate their survival. They worked harder, smiled less, and aged prematurely. I was among the survivors, one of the fortunate few. Mr. Bellwether, always brusque, became even more so after the layoffs, sharpening his demeanor as though he had a taste for power and wanted more. His gaze swept across every room, like a predator identifying its weakest prey, and for some inexplicable reason, He chose me. He would publicly rebuke me in meetings for supposedly overlooking the broader perspective. Even when I wasn't presenting, he would copy senior management on inconsequential errors. When I performed flawlessly, he remained silent. Silence became his weapon, and I foolishly endured. I reassured myself that he was stressed, that everyone was under immense pressure, that if I simply worked harder, he would relent. But regardless of my early arrivals, late departures, or flawless spreadsheet formatting, his negativity persisted. I stopped drawing, my sketchbook relegated to the bottom of a drawer. The mere thought of drawing brought my father's words echoing, "Art don't fill empty stomachs." A framed photo of my mother, a ceramic mug reading Introverts Unite, and the small plant I'd nurtured through 4 winters. My sketchbook was there, dusty and untouched, its cover closed. I stood observing the collection of a life I no longer inhabited. Around me, my colleagues returned to their tasks, pretending nothing had occurred. No one made eye contact. No one offered farewells. That was the most painful aspect. Not the job loss, not Mr. Bellwether's smug demeanor, but the silence, the collective ability of 30 people to act as though I had never existed. I placed the remaining items in the box, lifted it, and retraced my steps down the main hallway one last time. Each step felt heavier than the last. I didn't know where I was going, home, to my car, or to some oblivion where overlooked women vanish. Then I saw him. Mr. Davies stood around the hallway bend, near his cleaning cart, observing me. He didn't speak immediately, didn't ask what happened. He already knew. He approached, gently taking the box from my grasp and placing it on a nearby bench. Then, with a calm hand, he retrieved an object from his uniform pocket, a key. It was old, golden, slightly rusted, the type found in an attic or fairy tale. He extended it to me, as if it held sacred meaning. "It's time," he repeated softly. I blinked, still perplexed. Time for what? Mr. Davies' eyes met mine. They held no pity or sadness, but serenity and conviction. "To breathe," he explained. "Beatrice always told me, breathing isn't just about the lungs, it's about the soul. That studio has been waiting, Eleanor, for far too long." 17 Sycamore Lane. I stared at the key, then back at him. "I don't understand." "You don't need to," he responded. "Not yet." A key, trust, faith. Mr. Davies gave a gentle, weathered smile. "It's yours now, Eleanor. Beatrice would have wanted it this way." He offered no thanks, no speech, simply turned and pushed his cart down the hallway, disappearing as always. Quiet, consistent, kind. I stood, clutching the key to a place I'd never visited yet, somehow felt was my home. That night, I remained awake, sitting on my bed, the key still in my hand. I turned it over repeatedly, as if prolonged contact might unlock clarity. Severance pay, unemployment forms, rent. The practical side of my mind screamed, focus on survival. But another part of me, a part believed, long silenced, whispered softly, go. Around midnight, I started my car and drove. The streets were deserted. The rain continued, leaving streaks on the windshield. Following Mr. Davies' directions, I arrived at 17 Sycamore Lane, a modest house with a small yard, a crooked mailbox, and a garden gnome missing an eye. It appeared ordinary, the kind of place people forget exists. However, at the end of a gravel path stood a small detached structure, painted, faded blue, with a slanted roof, and a warm, yellow glow emanating from its porch. I approached cautiously, the key clutched tightly. The lock was stiff. It required 2 attempts before yielding with a soft click. The door creaked open, and I stepped inside. The air held the scent of old paint, cedar, and time. It was a single room, perhaps the size of a small classroom, yet it felt immense. Sunlight must have streamed through the tall windows during the day. Now gauzy curtains veiled them. Wooden shelves, laden with jars of dried brushes, tubes of paint, and stacked sketchbooks, lined the walls. A canvas stood in the center, draped with a sheet. I didn't touch it. I let my fingers trace the worn work table, adorned with dusty charcoal pencils, a folded apron, and a cracked ceramic mug, with dried paint clinging to the rim. This wasn't simply a room, it was a life suspended in mid-breath. On the table, beneath a jar of buttons, I found an envelope addressed to me in slanted script. Inside was a letter from Mr. Davies. Eleanor, the letter began. Beatrice always believed this studio held a soul, that its walls absorbed every brush stroke and sigh, returning it tenfold. After her passing, I couldn't bring myself to enter. But when I saw you sketching behind the building, I knew, you carry the same light. This space is yours now. This is not charity, it is recognition. You are an artist, even if the world tried to convince you otherwise. Life's too brief to live someone else's dream. Chipped teacups, garden flowers, Mr. Davies' gentle posture as he tended his tomatoes. I filled page after page, sometimes with nonsense, sometimes with frustration. Some drawings I tore before they dried, others I kept, affixing them to the walls like small affirmations. You are still here. You still matter. Mr. Davies visited occasionally, sometimes with a sandwich, sometimes simply with his quiet presence. He never interrupted. He sat silently in the corner, sometimes humming low and dissonantly, like a heartbeat. You have more color in your cheeks, he observed one day, offering me peppermint tea. I think it's charcoal dust, I replied, smiling. No, he responded softly. It's something else. Financially, I wasn't yet stable. The severance package provided temporary support, supplemented by my savings. Fear lingered, the fear that I was squandering my time, that I would deplete my funds, and that this fragile, beautiful discovery would vanish. Whenever doubt crept in, I would touch Beatrice's old smock hanging on a hook. It served as a reminder that someone had lived here before me, and she had dared to live her life. My first sale was almost accidental. Mr. Davies' niece, Abigail, visited with her newborn baby. I sketched the baby's profile for practice. She asked if she could purchase it. It's just a sketch, I said, embarrassed. It's him, she replied. That's enough. She paid me $50. I wept after her departure, not for the money, but because someone valued my creation. It transformed something within me. Pet portraits, nursery art, illustrations for a self-published poetry book. I began accepting projects I would have once dismissed. I painted a mural for a cafe, created a painting of someone's garden, and designed a logo. I was learning to live through brushstrokes, color, and intuition. Within 6 months, I had a small roster of repeat clients, earning enough to cover rent. I insisted on paying rent to Mr. Davies, despite his objections. I purchased new supplies, painted the walls, and improved the lighting, preserving the room's essence. Beatrice was still present, in the quiet corners, in the room's inherent warmth. I placed a photo found within her sketchbook, on a shelf above the work table, a black and white image of her laughing before a canvas, her hands covered in paint. Fear didn't entirely disappear, it lingered at the edges, especially during slower periods. Yet, every time I held a pencil, I felt more resilient. I wasn't where I aspired to be, but for the first time, I wasn't fleeing from myself, and that was sufficient. 2 years passed, and the studio became my world. My name, Eleanor Vance, started appearing in local publications and art galleries, typically followed by a modest description. I laughed when I first read it. Me, known. The quiet girl from the cubicle, never envisioned this. I had enough work to require administrative and scheduling assistance, so I hired a college student. I expanded my client list, shipped artwork across 3 states, and completed murals for 3 cafes. None of it was glamorous or effortless, but it was all mine. Every brushstroke led back to Mr. Davies. Mr. Davies visited less frequently. His knees ached, and winter air aggravated his joints. But when he did visit, he moved through the studio as though in a chapel. I believe, in his mind, it still belonged to Beatrice, and it did, in a sense. And now, perhaps, it belonged to both of us. One day, while organizing supplies, I found a photograph in an unopened drawer. It was a small, creased black and white image of a younger Mr. Davies and Beatrice, standing by a lake, arms entwined, beaming. It was an image brimming with life, and now laced with sorrow. An idea took hold of me. It wasn't commissioned, paid, or time-sensitive, but I knew, the moment I touched the paper, it might be the most significant work I'd ever create. For weeks, between commissions and online workshops, I worked on the painting in secret, employing every technique I knew, pouring my entire being into it. I didn't replicate the photograph. I reimagined it, painting Raymond and Beatrice, as they might have been, older, their wrinkles deeper, their hair whiter, yet still together. On the lakeside bench, hand in hand, still creating, still laughing, still whole. I cried, when I finished, not tears of sadness, but something deeper, closure, reverence. I invited Mr. Davies, and he arrived in his best corduroy jacket. I led him to the back room, where the painting stood, covered by a linen cloth. I have a gift for you, I said. Eleanor, you owe me nothing, he responded. I know, I replied, smiling gently, but I owe her. I unveiled the painting. Mr. Davies stood motionless, tears welling, then overflowing. Ow, he whispered. How did you know? I found the photo, I explained softly. The rest was imagination and gratitude. He nodded, unable to speak. We stood in silence. The painting radiated under the skylight. Beatrice's eyes shone with a mischievous joy that I imagined had sustained her entire life. Mr. Davies looked more at peace. After a long pause, he turned to me, his voice trembling. "You didn't just give me a painting," he said. "You gave her back to me." I took his hand, "And you gave me a future." Now, I awaken before sunrise, not because I must, but because I wish to. The studio is most peaceful in the early morning, before emails, orders, or the world's awareness of my existence. I brew coffee, pull on my paint-splattered hoodie, and sit by the tall window, facing a fresh canvas, my soul finally at peace. Sometimes, echoes of my office life, keyboard clicks, Mr. Bellwether's flat tone, the feeling of being unseen, surface, but they grow fainter, like voices from a past life. I haven't contacted anyone from Stellar Access Solutions since my departure. No one has reached out, no apologies, no closure. Honestly, I don't require any. What I possess now is far more valuable. A few weeks ago, I received a call from a children's book publisher. They'd viewed my online portfolio. One of my illustrations had been shared in a parenting group, and they offered a long-term contract to illustrate an entire series. When I hung up, I laughed openly, the sound echoing through the studio. I didn't realize I was crying until I tasted the salt on my lips. Beatrice would have loved that moment. So would Mr. Davies. I keep her photo on the shelf, beside fresh brushes, and a small sketch of the magnolia tree behind the Stellar Access building. It's a full circle, but better. The tree now exists only in memory, and that memory is mine. Last week, a young woman, Amelia, visited the studio. She'd followed my work online and inquired about apprenticeships. She resembled me years ago, eyes full of a quiet intensity, fingers fidgeting with her clothing. I said yes. Someone had made room for me, and now it's my turn. That night, I saw my reflection in the tall window, hair in a messy bun, paint on my cheeks, fingertips, even my neck. I looked alive. Not perfect, not wealthy, not famous, but seen. Miss Davies had said, "The right door opens at the right time, but it's up to us to have the courage to walk through it." I'm Eleanor Vance. I'm an artist, and I'm home.